Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is David Cashman. I'm from SEB Housing, and this is going to be the lottery drawing for the 6 affordable condominiums at Brix Condominiums in Salem. So thanks for joining. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about how we're going to do the lottery drawing and what to expect moving forward. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about how many households there were, and how I'm going to do the drawing. Let me just say that if there are questions, please feel free to ask those. There's a sort of a bar to the right of the screen where you see me, where you can type in questions. I'm going to write something there right now just so you can see what I'm talking about. So yeah, if at any point anyone has a question, I'll be happy to stop what I'm doing, unless I'm right in the middle of the lottery drawing, in which case I might ask you to hold tight, and then I'll circle back around to your question. But if someone has a question before we did the drawing or after, I'd be happy to stop and answer it. So let me just start by asking, is there anyone watching who does not know or remember what their lottery application number is? That's the number that's going to be in the form of A dot blank blank blank. So the first one is A.001, or it could be A.005 or whatever. We had 20 households in total. If you know your lottery application number, I don't need to know it. You don't need to provide that information. You can just keep that to yourself. And the reason you would want to know that is because those are the numbers I'm going to be drawing out of the box, and so that's what you're going to be listening for. So if you know your number, that's totally fine. If you've forgotten it, please feel free to type in in the bar where you can put the questions, type in your name, and I'd be happy to look it up for you. Okay, so in total, we had 20 households submit completed applications for the lottery. Now, as you may recall from looking through the informational materials, in this lottery, there is a local preference for some, but not all of the units, meaning that specifically for 4 of the units. And what that means is that as between similarly situated households who qualify for local preference will get priority, higher positions on the waiting list, as compared to households who don't qualify for local preference. Now, does that mean if you don't have local preference, you shouldn't have applied and you'll never get a unit? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that as between similarly situated households for 4 of the 6 units, there will be this additional category of preference. And there are other categories of preference too, particularly for the larger bedroom sizes for larger household types who need all of the bedrooms. So in total, there were, as I said, there were 20 completed applications for the lottery. 13 households qualified for local preference, 7 did not. Now, what we're going to be doing in just a few moments here is I will be putting all of the lottery application numbers, which are on little index cards like this. And we're going to have several different drawings. I'll be putting them in the lottery application box and drawing them out and holding them up to the screen and calling out the numbers as I go. Now, is the specific order in which I draw the numbers the actual order of the waiting list? And the answer to that is no, it's not, because I'm putting in all the different households who are eligible for the lottery without regard to what household type they are or even what bedroom size they applied for. So in the moment that I'm actually doing the drawing, you don't know, and frankly, I don't know exactly where any particular household is going to land on the waiting list. So while it is true that it is generally better to be picked earlier in the lottery, we don't know in real time as I'm doing the drawing exactly what everything means. Now, you might say, well, that kind of stinks. I'm sitting here watching. I'd like to know what it means, and I hear you. The good news is that within just a few hours of my doing the drawing, I will sort all the results to create the waiting list. Okay, and the waiting lists are going to look like this. Okay, and they're going to have your lottery application numbers on them. It's not going to be your names, it's just going to be your lottery application numbers. So A dot blank, blank, blank. And so you'll be able to find your number on your waiting list. And if so this is a waiting list right here. This is a separate one right here. There'll be 4 in total, 4 separate waiting lists. You'll find where you are on the waiting list and you'll say, okay, I'm second. There's 1 household ahead of me. And there are only 2 units on that waiting list. Great, I'm definitely going to have an opportunity. Or maybe I'm lower down. Shucks, that's not where I want it to be. I'm going to have to wait and see what happens with the households who are higher than I am on the waiting list. Now remember, every household will be on every waiting list that they applied and were eligible for. And many of you submitted applications indicating that you were interested in more than 1 bedroom type. So I think, in quickly just reviewing some of the data as I was preparing for the lottery tonight, I saw plenty of households who applied for 1 bedrooms and 2 bedroom units. There are 3 separate waiting lists for the 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So if a household applied and was eligible for all of those, they'll be on 3 separate waiting lists. They're going to have different spots on those lists, but they'll be on 3 separate waiting lists. If a household only applied for a 3 bedroom, they'll just be on the 3 bedroom list. If there was a household who applied for every unit type, 1s, 2s, and 3s, and was eligible for every unit type, they will be on all 4 waiting lists. Remember, there are 2 separate waiting lists for the 2 bedroom units because there are some 2 bedroom units at one price and 2 2-bedroom units at a slightly higher price. So if you are in the lottery, if you got your lottery application number and your letter from SEB Housing, you will be on a waiting list. You may be on several waiting lists, and you'll just have to find your number on the waiting list that you applied and were eligible for, as indicated in the letter that we sent you prior to the lottery. So like I said, there will be 4 total waiting lists. Let me just give you a little bit more information about that. There's going to be the 1 bedroom unit waiting list. There's only 1 1-bedroom affordable unit at this property. 9 households applied for it. There'll be 9 households on that waiting list. There are 2 2-bedroom units for $283,600. 12 households applied and were eligible for those units. There'll be 12 households on that waiting list. There were 2 2-bedroom units for $305,600. There were 10 households who qualified for those. Okay, so 2 households from the other 2-bedroom list didn't qualify for a 2-bedroom at the higher price. So there'll only be 10 households on that list for the 2 2-bedroom units at $305,600. And finally, there's a 3-bedroom unit. There's 1 of those. There were 8 households who applied and were eligible for that unit according to their lottery application. And so there'll be 8 households on that list. Now, when we do the lottery drawings, I have to do a local preference drawing with the 13 households who qualified for local preference. And then I have to do a general drawing that includes all 20 households who applied for the lottery, including the 13 local preference households. I know that seems a little bit redundant. It doesn't actually increase anyone's chances just by being drawn twice. That's just how the program says we have to do it. So I'll do the local preference drawing and I'll do the general drawing, which, as I said, will have all 20 households who applied for the lottery. But before I do that, I have to do a preliminary drawing because there were not a sufficient number of minorities in the local preference pool to match the percentage of minorities in the surrounding metropolitan statistical area. There were 13 local preference households, 4 qualified, 4 indicated they were minority. That's less than 33.4%, which is required. So to start out, we're going to do a preliminary minority drawing in which I will pick 1 minority household of the 4 who did not have local preference. I will add that household to the local preference drawing, and I will put the other 3 in the general drawing from where they originally originated. Okay, and by the way, I know I'm going into a lot of details, so if your head is kind of spinning and this is maybe going in one ear and out the other, I apologize. All of these details and more, are in a handout that I'm going to email to you tonight, along with the waiting list, which look like this. Okay, so everyone indicated that everyone in the lottery had an email. I expect you'll get an email from me within a few hours of doing the lottery drawing. It's going to have details on everything that I've just been talking about for the last 10 minutes, plus additional details, probably more than you even care to see, but I figure more is better. And also some instructions about moving forward. And actually, let's just talk about that for a second, because it's very important to remember that everyone in this lottery was entered into the lottery based on the information that they put in their lottery application. However, unlike many lotteries that we run, no household was actually required to submit income and asset and tax documentation demonstrating what their income and assets are. We took it on face value. We took it on based on whatever you put in your lottery application. So if you said, hey, my name's Joe and I make $60,000 a year, that's what we based it off of, okay? But if after the lottery, you're invited forward and you submit your taxes and your pay stubs and everything else, and it shows you make $80,000 a year, well, and that's, more than the allowed limit, then you may not actually even be eligible, okay? The relevance factor in determining income and asset eligibility is what your documents show, not what you put in your lottery application, okay? So please keep that in mind. There's still this big step left after the lottery and moving forward in this process. Getting into the lottery is a great start, but it's not the end of the process, okay? And by the same token, having a very high waiting list position, right, being one of these top households, doesn't necessarily guarantee you a unit because, again, we haven't seen your income and asset and tax documentation, which you're going to have to provide. And there will also be a time limit for doing so. You're going to have about a week, maybe 10 days to do that. All households who were entered into the lottery should have received a documentation requirements guide along with their lottery application number that spelled out in detail, dear sir, madam, you're entered into the lottery. Here's when it's going to be. Here's your household type. Here's the unit you applied for. Here's this documentation requirements guide. Please start collecting these documents, because if you're one of the top households after the lottery, you're going to have to submit all of these things, and you don't want to wait too long to get started on that, because there's a lot of stuff to collect. So hopefully you've already started building a file, and that next step will be relatively easy. Let me just talk about that quickly. So there's going to be more households on every waiting list than there are units. Okay, there's going to be more households on every waiting list than there are units on that list. Case in point, on the one-bedroom unit waiting list, there's only one unit, but there's 9 households who are actually eligible. We are going to go out to the top households on that list, probably several of them, okay, maybe 3, maybe 4, and say, you're being invited to move forward in the next step of this process, which is to submit all of your income and asset and tax documentation to SEB within the next week or 10 days. And the reason we do that is because the top household on the list, they may not actually be eligible. And if we go one by one by one, that takes a lot longer than just inviting 3 people or 4 people at the same time. What that means is that you may get invited, but if you're not in the top spot, you're not actually guaranteed a unit, even if you submit the required documentation and even if you're eligible. Okay, so please keep that in mind. We will invite more households from every waiting list than there are units on that waiting list, because in our experience, if we just invite the top households from every list, not everyone's going to actually end up purchasing one of these units. Things happen. people don't get their documents in time, their documents show they're not eligible. They are eligible, but they have a change of heart. They don't actually want to buy one of these units. They're eligible. They want to move forward. They can't get a mortgage commitment, so it doesn't work out. There are many reasons why things may not work out. So we go out to more households than there are units on each list. And by that same token, if you are not in one of the very top spots, that is not necessarily reason to say, oh, too bad, I am definitely not going to get one of these units. You may. Now, you're going to have to wait your turn to be invited and see what happens with the households ahead of you. But it does happen sometimes that households aren't able to move forward and close on a unit. So I wouldn't necessarily despair if you're not in one of the very top spots. Your number may come up yet. You're just going to have to wait. So there's a question from Marcia. How many for each have local preference? So for the 1-bedroom unit, there's 1 unit, 7 households had local preference. For the 2-bedroom units for which there is local preference, those were the ones at $283,600. There were 2 units and 8 households had local preference. And for the 3-bedroom unit, there's 1 unit and 4 households indicated local preference. And again, this is all in the lottery night handout that I will send to you after we do the drawing, along with the waiting list. And I'm sorry, when we used to do lotteries in person, I would show up with the lottery night handout and people could kind of read along as I went. But now I have to send it to you after. Another question, Jen. So is there an option to see the units if you're invited to submit documents to see the unit before the commitment? I believe there is. We need to help you coordinate that with the sales team. You should email us at info@sebhousing.com. Just put the email there, say your name, that you're interested in visiting the units, and we can reach out to the sales team about coordinating that. I know that previously that was an option. I believe it to still be an option, and we can try and help you facilitate that if that's something you're interested in. We just have to reach out to them and make sure it's something that they're still offering at this point in time. All right, so I've talked for a while. I'm sure everyone's ready for me to just get on with it and do the drawing. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to stop taking questions for the moment unless Keshia, so how many minority families have local preference? 4 of 13. 4 of 13 local preference households said they were minority, which is 30%, which is not more than 33%, which is why we need to do this preliminary drawing to add 1 minority household to the local preference pool. So I'm going to get on and do that. I think households are probably ready. So step 1 is preliminary minority drawing, taking 4 minority households who were not local preference, picking 1, adding that household to the local preference pool. So that's what we're going to do right now. So let me do that. By the way, I have to do this all kind of under my desk, but we have a lottery box, and then all the lottery numbers are on note cards, and I will be putting them in to the box, shaking it up, and then pulling out numbers and showing them on the screen. Please bear with me. I'll go as fast as I can, but obviously it's very important to be accurate. I have to show the number up, call it out, and then I also have to type it in so I have a record of it. So I'll do it as quickly as I can, but it does take me a second. Okay, so here we go with the minority drawing. So there's 4 households in the box. Shake it up. A.004. A.004. Okay, so this household is effectively a local preference household now moving forward, okay? And the other ones are just in the general pool. And again, these were minority households who did not indicate local preference. One of them is being added to the local preference pool so that there's a sufficient representation of minorities in the local preference drawing. A.004. All right. So there's actually going to be 14 local preference households now. Okay. Okay. First number drawn, A.007. A.007. A.009. A.009. A.017. A.017. A.014. A.014. A.016. A.016. A.010. A.010. A.004. A.004. Okay, we're up to the 8th drawing here, up to the 8th household. A.003. A.003. A.006. A.006. A.020. A.020. A.005. A.005. A.018. A.018. A.012. A.012. And finally, A.013. A.013. All right. So that was the local preference drawing. That was the 14 households for local preference. So I'm now going to actually take those 14 households, add them in with the other 6. So I now have all 20 who were in the lottery. And we're going to do the general drawing. And again, I know that seems redundant, and it kind of is. It kind of is. We could do it without the 2 separate drawings, but the program says we have to do 2 separate drawings, so that's what we must do. Again, this is going to be all 20 households for the lottery. 2, just going to double check myself. 3, 4, 5, 6, Put them in the box, shake it up. Okay, this is going to be the general drawing. Paolo, I see your question. Let me just do this one and then I will answer it. It's a good question. Okay. Okay, so this is the general drawing. First number, A.009. A.009. A.015. A.015. A.017. A.017. A.019. A.019. A.013. A.013. A.008. A.008. A.010. A.010. A.004. A.004. A.014. A.014. A.002. A.002. Okay, that was number 10, so we're halfway through. A.020. A.020. A.005. A.005. A.011. A.011. A.016. A.016. A.006. A.006. A.018. A.018. A.012. A.012. Okay, just a few more left. A.003, and 2 more left here. A.001, A.001, and last but not least is A.007, A.007. All right, so that is it. That's the drawing. Again, hard to know exactly what all this means right in this moment. Generally better to be drawn earlier than later, but we've got all the different numbers mixed in. We got people applying for 1 bedrooms in the lottery with people applying for 3 bedrooms. So generally a little hard to say exactly where you are just based on that, okay? Hard to say where you are based on what you've just seen. However, like I said before, good news is within a few hours, I'm going to sort all the results according to the required priorities, local preference, household type, what bedroom sizes people applied for, and I will create the waiting list and I will email those to you. So you just find your lottery application number on the waiting list that you're on, and that will let you know where exactly you stand relative to other people. So Paula had asked, can you explain the local preference drawing again? And yes, so when this project was permitted, the city of Salem said that they would like a preference for local households who live in Salem, work in Salem, or have kids attending the Salem schools. Now, that local preference can only apply for up to 70% of the units. In this case, there are 6 units. So the most that preference could apply to is 4 units, okay? So for the 1-bedroom unit, the two lower priced 2-bedroom units and the 1 3-bedroom unit, as between similarly situated households, local preference households would be higher on those waiting lists than households who don't have local preference. Now, you still have to factor in household type for the bigger units, because household type is a more weighted factor on the waiting list. Now, in the Lottery Night handout that I'm going to email to you tonight, at the very back, I'm sending to you exactly how the waiting lists are populated, okay? Because it's hard to kind of listen to this and figure out exactly what it means. But I do think if you look at those waiting lists, you'll see, like, for example, on the 3-bedroom local preference waiting list, you'll see, okay, the top households on that list are all type 3 households, meaning they need 3 bedrooms, local preference. The second tier of households are going to be type 3 households who don't have local preference. The next tier of households is going to be type 2 households who have local preference, followed by type 2 households who don't have local preference, followed by type 1 households who have local preference, followed by type 1 households who don't. Okay, so for each of the 4 waiting lists, I've laid out in the back of that document that I'm going to send to you tonight exactly how the waiting lists are populated by household type and local preference. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of how those get created. So Melvin, 7 was first and last. Do they have preference over all other locals? I don't know, Melvin, because I don't know what type of household 7 is. I don't know what bedroom size they applied for. So in this moment, I can't tell you. I have to sort the results onto the waiting list, and then we'll know what that means. I can tell you just that's sort of amazing to be first and last. I don't think you see that often. But in general, what that means is that, you know, being drawn first in the local preference is generally a good thing. And being last is not ideal. But again, it depends on what household type you are and what units you're applying for, and So I got to sort the results and then we'll know. But I can't tell you in this moment because I honestly don't know, because I have to sort the results first. Okay, any other questions? Any questions? Okay, well, I know it's a lot of information. Don't expect everyone to have digested it all just from sitting and listening, but I hope that when I send you the results by email tonight with which will have some informational materials, much of which I went over, but you can take your time and read it at your own pace. Hopefully looking at that will kind of hammer home some of those ideas that I was going over. Keep in mind that on each waiting list, the households who are higher up on the waiting list will be getting invited immediately forward in the next step of this process, which is to submit to SED Housing all of your income and asset and tax documentation demonstrating that you're actually eligible for the program. So hopefully you have those documents together. If not, you're going to need to move quickly to get them together. If you're not one of the households who's immediately invited forward, that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't ever get invited forward. You may. You just have to wait and see what happens with the households ahead of you. So thank you, everyone, for your interest in this opportunity. It's a great program. It's a wonderful, beautiful new building. I'm sure that the people who end up getting to purchase units there will be very happy. If you think of additional questions that you neglected or didn't want to ask during the session, you can always reach out to us by emailing us or calling us, and we'd be happy to talk to you. And thank you again, and I hope everyone has a great night. So, good night.